things ain't like before. There are tears in the eyes of the regular guys. Oh, New York ain't New York anymore.
Yeah, well, it's sort of absurd. I mean, it's hard to... It just kind of made sense. Manhattan lends itself to this kind of project because it's this discrete unit totally surrounded by water that's packed with cool stuff.
But this is Minetta, you see, this is Minetta Lane and this is Minetta Street. This is Panchito's Mexican restaurant. But if you look up there at the facade, it says Fat Black Pussycat. This was a bohemian hangout in the late 50s, early 60s, you know, the Beats and those types. Bob Dylan spent a long afternoon here in April 1962 writing Blowin' in the Wind.
Whoa. I think the idea with the walk was to pay attention, to walk, to mindfully be in all these different places and to try to understand them and absorb them. And at first I tried doing it with some people and, you know, you just start talking or whatever and it's fine, but it's not. I decided the walk needed to be alone. And I also had to have my camera and a notebook, and those were the rules. And my map. As I walked, I carried it in pieces so I didn't have to unfold the whole thing. Aesthetically, it's pleasing to look at Hagstrom maps. This is the older version. They don't sell these anymore. This is hand-drawn, and the new version is all digital. On this particular map, streets are yellow or white, and so I just walked all the yellow and white streets and filled it in with those big black lines.
1939 World's Fair out in Queens. They built, it was this Art Deco design, you know, the whole thing, and they built thousands of these benches, these park benches. And after the fair was over, they distributed them all over the city. They're all over there, all over Central Park. Every park in the city pretty much has these 1939 benches.
What kind of shoes did you wear?
Somebody else asked me this. I was doing an interview with Time Out New York, which is, they talk about events, you know, and when clubs or, you know, what events are happening at clubs and things, and they do a lot of fashion. And the guy wasn't, he didn't really care about this. He'd been assigned to do this, and oh, you walked every street, that's great. And then he asked, well, what kind of shoes were you wearing? And I was like, Prada? And he was like, really? And he was so excited. And he's like, can you send me a picture of your shoes? And that was like the big picture in the article was, you know, man walks every street in Prada shoes. And as you can see, they've seen better days. The thing is, I'd gone to an apartment sale with my girlfriend at the time, and this guy was selling used Prada shoes for, you know, $10 or something. I would never have even known to buy them, but, you know, Abigail's like, buy these shoes. So I had these two almost new pairs of Prada shoes that I wore for pretty much the whole walk, and they're very, very comfortable shoes. They're great shoes. So, Prada.
Little anomaly over here, really rare. They changed the building codes long time ago, so you couldn't build a collaborative house like this. There's police. They have their own little logos, and a lot of times they put them on the outside of the police department. Two of my favorites are over here. It looks like if I ran the circus, you remember the car they were driving? I think it's interesting that they've taken on the bad guy as their logo. Now it's cute and quaint, but
right.
it wasn't in the 30s, you know?
There's a cemetery in the East Village called New York Marble Cemetery, but it's totally surrounded by by houses, so you can't see it from the street. There's apartment buildings all the way around, and there's just this little gate through this little alley, and they only open it once a month. I've been there before, but I want to go back today and just take some photos.
This is the New York Marble Cemetery, and it was founded in 1830, 1831. This is 14th Street, this is Bowery, that's Broadway. This is the cemeteries in one of these fields. This is a cemetery, not a burial ground. Cemetery comes from the Greek for sleeping chamber, and it means vault. This vault, when it was opened, I think it had not been opened since 1890 something. And it opened just, as sweet as you could want. And mostly the people who were the original founders lived on the tip of the island. They were beginning to move north. There were some nearby, but mostly they were way down on the end. Well, one of the people was a Dr. David Hosack, who was Alexander Hamilton's doctor. And he went across the river and back with him, of course. And there were a number of people. They were people that you would have known if you'd lived then. The comforting part about that is that in 170 years, people won't know who Donald Trump is. And you can cut that out.
Yeah.
I love just walking and exploring my environment no matter where I am. I was totally enamored with Albuquerque and Boston when I lived in those places, but New York just happens to lend itself to this kind of activity pretty nicely. People love New York City, and so I think for whatever reason the walk has symbolizes for some people it's like I know New York or whatever. They're oh, it's this person who understands New York. I think that's what the interest is people are I live in New York, and so this person does too, and so
There's a connection.
there's a connection. So they're just sort of sharing that with me.
Living in the city is fine if you're out of your mind. Getting giddy over overpopulation and crime. It's high time we go find 26 and then get us a couple of dimes before the drive to the city limits in the system overdrive. Grinning while I'm driving and skimming the Great Divide, singing the rhythms of skinny dipping while I'm sipping and sitting. I'm staring at your women. Amen.